Hi, I'm Kathy Mitchell. Thank you for bringing the turbo cooker pan into your home. And now if you'll spend a few minutes with me, I'm going to show you how it can make your cooking fast, fun, and healthy. First of all, let's take a look at what you got in the box. You got your turbo cooker pan. Now this is a dynamite pan. It's got a great nonstick surface. It's easy to use and it's really easy to clean. You also got a steamer rack. Now this is what allows you to cook in layers. For instance, cooking your meat on the bottom while you're steaming your vegetable on the top, or cooking your pasta or side dish on the bottom while you're steaming your fish or meat on the top. And we'll show you a lot more about that later on. One thing I do want to point out though is that the rack is reversible. So if you've got something very large in the bottom like a roast or a chicken, you can turn it upside down and it gives you just a little bit more room under the rack. Now you also got your turbo dome cover. It's high enough that it will allow you to stack lots of food up on that rack and still have plenty of room for cooking. And it also has a great valve on the top. Now this valve will open or close, and every recipe will tell you whether you need to be cooking with the valve open or closed, so you don't have to guess at it. But we'll explain more about that later. Now you also got 30 of these great full color, full meal recipe cards. These are going to take you through breakfast, lunch, dinner, desserts, and lots more. Plus, you'll got a great quick and easy cooking guide. Now this is going to help you to make your family's favorite foods and actually even create some of your own recipes. All the information you need to cook anything in this guide. And one more thing, you also got a great springform pan. Now this is what we're going to use later on to make some super desserts. So let's go back for just a second to the recipe cards, because these are actually the key to using your pan. Everything you need to know is on here, and to explain them to you a little bit, I've got the man with me today, not only responsible for writing these recipe cards, but for inventing the turbo pan, Chef Randall.
Hi, Kathy.
Hi, Randall. Why don't you show them a little bit about how they're going to use these cards?
We've tried to make these cards easy for everybody to use. We've color-coded them for breakfast, lunch, and dinner, orange, green, and blue. We've given you all the information on it for your recipes to be able to purchase the food both in main ingredients, liquid, and dry ingredients. We tell you how long it takes to make the recipe. We tell you how many people it serves. We also give you all the nutritional information so you know exactly what you're getting when you're eating the food. And on the back of the card, what you've got are all of the elements that you need to actually make the food.
In other words, these are so complete that when I have these cards, it's like having Chef Randall right here in the kitchen with me every step of the way.
Kathy, you're 100% right. You've got the cards. You don't need me anymore.
Thanks, Chef Randall. Okay, let's start turbo cooking. Now I'm going to start with a basic how to fry without oil. And to do that, we're going to go ahead and make this sirloin steak and sautéed onion recipe. Now, all of the timing on all the recipes starts with a cold pan. So the first thing I'm going to go ahead and do is add my ingredients. In this case, we've got some strips of sirloin steak that we've marinated in just a little bit of wine and some seasonings, and some onions. And let me show you a little trick while we're doing this. Easy way for you to cut that steak into strips is with a pair of scissors. Easy and fast just to cut it just like that. Much easier, I think, than a knife. So you're going to find little hints like that on your recipe cards as you go along. So now we're going to go ahead and turn that heat up to high. And notice I'm not adding any liquid. Now, the onions have a natural water to them. The meat has a natural water. And they all have a caramelizing agent that as we cook them on this dry pan, you're going to get a natural brownness. So I'm going to go ahead and cover that up and give it 4 minutes. And once that's done, we're going to show you how to cook your rice in there at the same time, and we'll actually have sirloin steak and sautéed onions on a bed of white rice. Now, while I'm looking at this recipe, you notice it's got a broccoli along with it, and we're going to steam that in there in a minute. But I want to show you that these recipes are not going to limit you to just the recipes that are on them. If you take a look at this, you can imagine if I marinated that steak in a teriyaki or a soy sauce instead of the wine, I could have a broccoli beef. Or if I substituted the strips of steak for strips of chicken, I could have a chicken stir fry. So you can use these recipes as a guide, but changing a few ingredients, you can really double and triple the amount of recipes you're going to be able to cook with your pan. Now I've got the timer set for 4 minutes. Recipe card says valve closed. Always going to tell me what I need to know. Ready to go there. Now while that's cooking, let me show you something else in this other pan here. Because in this one I've got the meat sautéing on the bottom, and in a minute I'm going to move the meat up to the top and cook my rice on the bottom. And we're going to use an instant rice. Over here though, I want to show you if you want to do a packaged rice mix, something that takes a little bit longer, like this one takes about 20 minutes, I'm going to go ahead and start the rice in the bottom, then I'm going to move it up to the top and cook my meat in the bottom. So you'll show basically the same frying of the meat and the cooking of the rice, but in 2 different ways. So I'm going to go ahead and put in my rice and my liquid. And I've left out the margarine that this calls for. You'll find that when you make packaged rices, you don't really need to add that margarine or butter to them. We're going to go ahead and set that timer on high, and that temperature on high, excuse me. And this is going to take 20 minutes total, but I'm going to give it about 10 minutes right now. We're going to cook it halfway, then we're going to move the rice up to the top to finish the cooking, and I'll show you how you can fry your meat on the bottom. Now we're going to go ahead and put on the dome, and we're going to close that valve, 10 minutes on the timer. All right, now while these are cooking, let's talk about a few handy things that you've probably got in your kitchen right now that you're going to be able to use with your turbo cooker. I talked about after that rice is about halfway cooked, I'm going to transfer it to a bowl and move it up to the steam rack. So what about a bowl? You can just about use anything you've got, whether it's metal or ceramic or glass or even a hard plastic. These will all work inside your pan. Now you're also going to find it's handy to have a kitchen fork around because this is what you're going to use to lift up your rack, and I'll show you that in just a couple of minutes. All right, I have about 7 seconds left on the timer, so I'm going to get my water ready because I want to show you that once the timer goes, you're going to see the brownness we're getting around here, and I'm going to go ahead and add that 1/4 cup of water that it calls for. And now when I stir this around, look at the brownness I've gotten in the bottom of that pan there. And that's all with no oil. So those onions are caramelizing beautifully. We're getting a nice brownness. Now, recipe tells me to give it just a couple more minutes on that side. So get that meat on the other side. And I think this one's just about ready to move over. Yeah, I've just got about 27 seconds here. Now you can see that still has a little bit of the liquid left in it. And as I put it into this bowl, it's going to finish cooking up on the top. So I'm going to go ahead and transfer it into a bowl. And here's where you can see that wonderful nonstick surface really comes in handy because this pan is practically clean in the bottom, just like that, just a couple of grains of rice. All right, so while that rice is going to cook on the top, now I'm going to go ahead and cook my meat in the bottom. And in this case, I've got some pork chops and a piece of chicken. Just lay them right in the bottom. Go ahead and season them with whatever you like, whatever your favorite seasonings are. We're going to set that steamer rack in there. I'm going to place the rice right up on the top. And I'm going to add about 1/4 cup of water right around the edges there. Remember, we're frying with no oil. Remember, your recipe is always going to tell you whether your valve needs to be open or closed. So in this case, I'm going to leave that valve closed. Now, our meat should be just about browned over here. And let me grab this spatula. Look at that beautiful brownness I've got without adding any oil to that. Now in this case, I'm going to go ahead and transfer that meat to a bowl. It's ready to eat. And that's going to stay warm on the top while I make my rice and my broccoli. Now if you wanted to wipe out the pan, you could, but in this case I'm going to go ahead and leave those drippings in there because that's going to help to add to the flavor of my rice. So I'm going to go ahead and add 2 cups of water and 2 cups of instant rice, and that's just going to take about 5 minutes. I'm going to lower the temperature a little bit. Place my steamer rack on the top. Put my cooked meat and my vegetables. We're going to steam the broccoli at the same time. So we're going to be cooking rice, steaming broccoli, and keeping our meat warm and ready to serve. Cover on, valve closed. And that just needs 5 more minutes, and that'll be ready to eat. Okay, this meat's ready to turn now. So we're just going to lift off the steam rack. And we're going to turn those pieces over. Now look at the brownness I've got, again with no oil in there. I am, though, going to add just a little seasoning on the top and a little more water to keep that steam going. Because now I'm going to steam my vegetables. Just a couple of tablespoons there, just around the edges. Keeps that brownness in there. We'll put that rack back on. And we're going to go ahead and add our broccoli here. See, that rice is coming right along. It's just about finished. So I can add my broccoli. And you know, you can do any kind of vegetable you want. You're not locked into broccoli. If you like green beans or carrots, whatever your family likes, it's going to steam right along with that rice finishing cooking right there on the top. And that's about 5 minutes from ready to serve. Okay, there's the timer. That means our dinner's ready to serve. And there's our steamed broccoli and our beef. And underneath is our rice. So let's get it plated up here. Move this off of here. And we'll go ahead and serve up that rice. And you can see it's fluffy and perfectly done. And we'll go ahead and put the meat on there. I like to serve it right in the center. Oh, look at that. And don't forget our perfectly steamed broccoli. And we'll just put it right around the edges here. Okay, now our other dinner's ready too. Here's our pork chops. That's a man-sized portion of pork chops. And that chicken, and look at the beautiful brownness we got. And remember, there was no oil added to do those meals. Okay, we're going to do a couple of pasta recipes now. The first one, I'm going to go ahead and use one of the recipe cards, but the other one, I'm going to show you how you can put together your own recipe using the guide. So let's start off with a pasta primavera. The recipe calls for 2 cups of dry pasta and 2 cups of water. And remember, all your timings are going to start in a cold pan, so you don't turn on the heat till after your ingredients are in the pan. And a half a teaspoon of water. You know, this is one of the things you're going to love about using the turbo cookers. You don't have to have a separate pan for the pasta and a separate pan for the sauce. You can cook it all in the same pan. So for this, I'm going to make a pasta primavera, and look at this load of beautiful, fresh vegetables. I'm going to steam those at the same time I cook that pasta. So we're going to turn on that heat to high. We're going to put the lid on. And this one calls for 8 minutes with the valve open. Now, I said I'm going to try one with the guide. So take a look at what we've got here. First of all, I want to make some bow tie pasta. So I've got 2 cups of bow ties. I'm going to go ahead and put those in. Now, since those bow ties need 3 cups of water, but I wanted to add a little bit of a creaminess to this, so I've used a can of cream of broccoli soup. Put the soup in first and added enough water to give me that 3 cups of liquid. And now I'm going to go ahead and pour that right on the bow ties. Now I'm also going to cook these salmon steaks and some asparagus. According to the guide, these bow ties are going to need 8 minutes with the valve open and 6 minutes with the valve closed. The salmon steaks, though, need 8 minutes with the valve closed, and so does the asparagus. But you know what? Cooking is not brain surgery. I'm going to fudge those numbers just a little bit, and it's still going to work. So we're going to go ahead and start this off with 6 minutes with the valve open. And then I'm going to add the rest of my foods, and we'll give it the last few minutes. Now, this is one of the wonderful things about cooking with a timer. Once I set that timer for that 6 minutes, I can take that with me and go wherever I want to go and do whatever errands I need to do around the house. I'm not stuck here watching the food on the stove. So we'll come back in a few minutes and see how this is doing. Okay, there's the timer. Now I'm going to add my vegetables. Now you can see my pasta is absorbing that liquid. This is not going to have to drain when it's done cooking. It's going to have that beautiful sauce. So I'm just going to go ahead and add my steamer tray with my salmon and my asparagus. I'm going to go ahead and cover that up. And now we're going to close the valve, and I'm going to give it 8 more minutes. Now over here, our pasta primavera is just about ready to go. I'm going to fudge for your sake here, and let's get it started. I've got about actually a few more seconds, but we're going to go ahead and dump it in. Now what I've got here is the pasta is partially cooked, not quite done yet, and I'm going to go ahead and, according to the recipe, I'm going to go ahead and dump these veggies down into it. Oh, look at those! Look at the color on those vegetables. There's nothing like steamed vegetables. Whew, a little warm. I'm going to give that a stir. And now I'm going to go ahead and cover it. And it needs 3 more minutes, still with the valve open. Okay, so we'll check back in a few minutes. Okay, that 3 minutes is up. Now, according to the instructions, I'm going to give it a little bit of a stir. And now we're going to give it another 5 minutes with the valve closed. That's where that pasta is really going to absorb the rest of the liquid. And then we'll add a sauce, and that'll be just about ready to serve. So we're going to close the valve, and 5 more minutes. Okay, there's the bell. And let's take a look. Oh, look at that salmon. Is that beautiful? It's perfectly cooked. The asparagus is beautiful and green. And here is our pasta in a cream sauce, perfectly done. See, I didn't have to drain it, didn't have 2 or 3 pots to clean up. That's beautiful. Now we'll get that on a plate in a couple of minutes and show you how it looks. Let's check our pasta primavera. Perfect. Now, according to the recipe, I need to give this a stir. You can see that pasta is really absorbing the liquid. We're going to add some sauce. In this case, I just add any of my own favorite spaghetti sauce. And a little bit of Parmesan cheese. Give that a toss. And according to the recipe, it just needs 3 more minutes and it'll be ready to serve. So when we come back, it'll be time to eat. There's our salmon dinner, perfectly cooked. We've got a piece of beautiful salmon, the asparagus, and that pasta in a cream sauce, all in one pan. Isn't that great? And now, here's our pasta primavera. This whole meal took less than 20 minutes. We've got our beautiful pasta and all of our fresh vegetables. This is enough to feed any big family, and it's delicious. Okay, I wanted to do something with ground beef to show you how to deal with that. So for that, I'm making the beef taco casserole that's on your recipe cards. And this is one of my family's favorites. It's an all-in-one casserole with a great Mexican flavor. Now, I've browned the ground beef in the pan, and I want to show you, when you deal with ground beef, you're always going to have a little bit of fat left over after you're done. And rather than dirtying up something else to drain it, here's a quick and easy way to get that excess fat out of there. Just take a couple of paper towels, tilt that pan so the fat drains to one side, and just use those paper towels, kind of swish them around with your spatula, and that'll take all that excess grease right out of your pan. This is pretty lean burger to start with, but that got that last little bit of hamburger, that grease out of there, and I can just throw that away, and I've just saved myself a lot of calories. Now I can just go ahead and add all the rest of the ingredients in. It calls for some canned tomatoes, again, my dry pasta. In this case, I'm going to use some spiral pastas, and the water, and any kind of seasoning you want. Now here's another place where you can change this recipe to suit your family's taste. In this case, I'm using ground beef and a little taco seasoning, but you could also use a spaghetti seasoning. It would totally change the taste of this, so that buys you another recipe anytime you want to change those seasonings. Now all I do now is stir that up. Now at the same time I'm going to cook that pasta, I'm going to go ahead and cook my vegetables. And in this case, I'm going to make some Mexican corn. Now, if you've noticed the slots in those steamers, kind of large, corn would fall right through. So let me show you a little trick. If you've got one of these folding steamers, just lay that right on top, and that way you can do peas or corn or any of your smaller vegetable pieces without having them fall through the steamer. So now we're going to steam our corn. That pasta is going to cook perfectly, and that whole thing is going to take about 12 minutes ready to serve. Now, over here, I'm going to show you an old family favorite. And again, this is something that there's no recipe card for, so I want to show you how you can adapt your own family recipes. This is a recipe my mom made all the time. It's for kind of a chicken paprika stew, goulashy kind of thing. It doesn't even have a name. It's so old. So I'm going to start off with some chicken, and we're just going to put in these are thighs in this case, and we're going to go ahead and put the lid on. And those need to brown on high heat. I've not added any oil to it. Those are going to brown for 3 minutes. So we'll come back in a few seconds and check on those. Okay, there's the timer. Means our chicken should be brown. Whoa, that smells great. Now I'm going to add some seasoning to it. In this case, a little paprika and some garlic. And then we're going to just give it a little stir here. Look at the beautiful brownness we're getting in there. And again, with no oil. And now, this is kind of a dump recipe. Now we're just going to dump everything else in there. I've got some cream of mushroom soup. Just give that a little bit of a stir. A little seasoned tomato juice. Some pasta. We'll use some of those spirals. And some beautiful fresh vegetables. There's carrots, celery, green and red peppers, mushrooms, onions. This is a wonderful stew when it's done. And, of course, some water. This pan really holds a lot of food. You can cook for a large group in here, no problem at all. Just give that a stir around. Oh, looks good already, doesn't it? All right, and we'll put the lid on. And just for the pasta, that's going to take 14 minutes with the valve closed. Okay, there's the timer. Our taco casserole should be just about done. Oh, yes. And there's our perfectly steamed vegetables, just right. And take a look at our casserole. Is the pasta cooked? Everything cooked perfectly. Now, I like to add a little cheese on top of this. So what I'll generally do is just go ahead and sprinkle a little cheese, turn off the heat, and recover it for just about a minute or two, just enough time to give that cheese to melt, and then we'll serve it up. Okay, there's our taco casserole and Mexican corn, and you know, it's pretty enough to serve right in the pan. I just put the pan right on the table and let everybody eat family style. Now, how about my grandmother's famous paprika chicken stew? Oh, I wish you could smell that. It is so good on a cold winter night. This is real comfort food. Serve that with a loaf of crusty Italian bread, and it is just delicious. Okay, I promised you some baking, and let's start with one of my all-time favorites, because this is cherry cola cupcakes, bakes right in the pan on top of the stove in 10 minutes from start to finish. A lot of times what I'll do is when I take my meal out of the pan, I'll just rinse out the pan and just put this on to cook while we eat dinner, and then dessert's ready when we're done. So what I start with is just one of these small chocolate cake mixes. I've got it in the bowl here. Here's the secret though. Instead of the water, I'm going to add 1/2 of a cup of diet cola. Now you can use any kind you want, and the egg, and just give that a quick mix. Now the other secret is that in the bottom of the pan, I'm going to make a hot cherry topping. So what I'm going to put in there is 1 can of cherry pie filling, and the rest of that can of Coke. Now what's going to happen is I turn this on. This is going to come to a boil, and that's going to provide the steam I need to bake my cupcakes. It's also going to boil down into a nice thick sauce that I can serve right on top of those cupcakes when they're done. So we're going to put on the steam rack, and I've just got a 6-cup muffin pan that I've sprayed with a little bit of nonstick spray. And we'll go ahead and fill those muffin cups up with our chocolate cake. This is so fast and so easy. You know, the secret of baking in the turbo pan is that everything comes out so moist, and you don't have to add any oil. You know, a lot of cake mix calls for adding oil now, and that's going to add extra calories that we don't need. But cooking it this way, the cola makes them rise nice and light, the steam keeps them nice and moist, and you won't miss that oil at all. Now I got kind of messy, but you get the idea here. On high heat, 10 minutes, and we'll have dessert. Now, while that's cooking, take a look over here, because what I've got is that springform pan that I promised we're going to show you how to use. Now in the bottom, as you can see, I've got some brown sugar, some pineapple rings, and I'm going to make an upside down cake. Now the difference here is that there is no recipe for upside down cake. Your recipe is for chocolate cake. But I want you to realize that you don't have to use these recipes exactly as they're printed. What you do is use them to give you the times you need to do your baking. So in this case, I've got a white cake mix that I've mixed up. Now here's another secret for you. Again, I mentioned that most of the cake mixes you're going to find in the store nowadays call for adding oil. I've left out the oil. What I used in here was 1 can of diet ginger ale, and the 3 eggs it called for, but I left out that 1/3 of a cup of oil. I just added enough liquid so that I think it called for 1 1/4 cups of water and 1/3 of a cup of vegetable oil. I just used all the cola instead. Now I've put my pineapple rings down in the bottom with a little bit of brown sugar, and now we're going to pour in the cake mix. And you're going to use that cake recipe card for the timing you need to make that cake. So it calls for 1 1/2 cups of liquid in the bottom. Set your cake right up on the rack. Turn your heat on high. Place the lid on top. And we're going to start 10 minutes with the valve open. And we'll come back and check on that in just a minute. There's our muffins. Let's take a look. Oh, those are looking good. Now you always want to check and be sure they're done. I just slide a fork down along the edge. Ooh, and I can see they're just still a little bit gummy in the bottom, so I'm going to give them just a minute or so more. You know, anytime your recipe times don't come out exactly like the recipe cards, don't worry about it. You know, everybody's stove is a little bit different, so we're just going to add another, let's give it another 2 minutes, and then we'll check those. But it's time to do the next step. Now this has been in for 10 minutes, and look how beautiful it's rising. Isn't that gorgeous? Now the recipe says that I need to add another 1.5 cups of water, and I'm going to give it another 10 minutes, but this time with the valve closed. So we're going to close that valve and give that another 10 minutes. And we'll come back in just a couple of minutes and those muffins should be done. Let's see what we've got here. Oh, wow. Don't those look beautiful? Now remember, these only took 10 minutes. Well, actually 12. We gave them an extra 2 minutes because they weren't quite done on the bottom. And let's check them now. Oh, yeah, perfect. Look at that. Nice and high and light. And here's how you serve them. Just put that right on a plate. And here's our hot cherry topping. Oh, look at that. See that Coke boiled away, and now we're just left with a nice thick topping. And we just put a spoonful right on top of there. And that is a dessert fit for company that your whole family will enjoy. Okay, there's the bell. Our upside down cake should be ready to serve. Oh, look how high and light that rises. Now here's how you serve it. Just turn your plate upside down on your pan and flip it over. And this is a spring-form pan, which makes it very easy to remove. You just loosen that spring and just kind of give it a shake. It's a little warm. It lifts right up off of there. And then we'll just peel off the top. Oop. One little piece of pineapple stuck. Look at that. Is that beautiful? Perfect every time. And remember, there's no extra fat in that cake, so it's diet cake. Okay, we've cooked a lot of food today, but I think the one thing we've not cooked yet is breakfast. A lot of people hate to cook breakfast. It's hard to make everything come out all at one time. So let me show you how easy it is to do with our pan. We're going to start with eggs. Now, if you have an egg poacher like this, let me show you how simple it is to use. All you have to do is crack your eggs into the little wells. Now, I've already got some liquid in the base of the turbo pan. And all we're going to do now is sprinkle this with a little bit of seasoning, whatever your family likes. A little salt and pepper is always good. And we're just going to go ahead and set it right on that steamer rack. Turn the stove on to high. Put on the lid. And the valve is closed. Now, if you don't have an egg poacher, watch this. Because I'm going to show you how to use a muffin pan. And I'm going to do a couple of different things. We're going to go ahead and do those same poached eggs like I just did before, but I'm also going to show you how to make a pretty incredible omelet that your kids will absolutely love. The neat thing about making omelets in here is everybody can kind of add what they like in the omelet. So what I've got in this bowl are just some beaten eggs, and I'm just going to go ahead and divide them up into the little trays there. And if you wanted to add some mushrooms or some sauteed green peppers, this is a great place to put any leftovers you might have had from last night's dinner, little pieces of meat or vegetable or whatever. Or if you just like the traditional cheese omelet, I'll do a couple of them with cheese. Just going to sprinkle a little bit of cheese on top of there. And our seasonings. And again, all we have to do now is place that muffin pan right on top. Now, you could conceivably be frying some hash browns or sausage in the bottom at the same time. Because remember, you can do more than one thing in the pan at a time. Pop on the lid. Temperature on high. I'm going to close that valve. And that's only going to take about 4 minutes. Now, while those are cooking, let's talk about some of the other things you might like to do for breakfast. You know, breakfast is one of those hard meals to get everybody fed at the same time. We used to have to eat in shifts. But with the pan here, you can make pancakes or French toast, cook them on the bottom, and as they're done, stack them up on the rack and keep them warm while you keep on cooking until you've got enough to serve everybody. So it's a great pan for breakfast. Now, a couple of things I want to talk about while we're waiting for this food to get done. When you use the recipes, if you find that your recipes are not coming out with exactly the same timing as we used in our recipes, let me mention a couple of variables that you might be dealing with. First of all, we've tested all the recipes on gas and electric stoves, but let's face it, everybody's stove is different. Even on my stove, I find that the flame on this side is higher than the flame on that side. So when we say to put something on high or medium-high temperature, if you find that yours at the end of the cooking time still has a little bit of extra liquid in it, then you know that you're going to have to give it a little bit more time because maybe your stove isn't as hot as the ones we tested on. If it's getting a little bit done too fast, you're either going to need to lower the heat a little bit or cut down on the liquid or add a little extra liquid. So play with it a little bit until you find the right timing and the right temperature for your particular stove, and then all of the recipes will be simple and easy for you to do. There's the bell. Our eggs are ready. Ow, look at those. Aren't they perfect? You'll never have to say you can't cook eggs again now. Look at those, just great. Oh, and right on time, there's our omelet. Oh, look how they puffed up. These are so perfect. These are our little cheese, individual cheese omelets. Your kids are going to love those. And the eggs. Look at that. Breakfast in a jiffy. Those are perfect eggs. All right, I think you guys are ready to head for the kitchen and cook. So if I could give you one last piece of advice, relax, have a good time. The recipes are fun and easy. You're going to love it using your pan. Have a good time.